Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, October 6th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Michigan State game is in 2 days, the game against Michigan in 51 days. We're back at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for our normal Wednesday evening interviews. Got to talk to a whole bunch of Buckeyes. A lot of line talk today. A little bit of Euchre talk. Tony cannot wait to get to the Euchre talks. I'm going to make him wait on that a little bit because once we start, I feel like it's not going to stop. So we're going to start instead with football, which is, I'm guessing, what everyone other than you came to hear about today. Buckeyes obviously playing at Michigan State this weekend. This is the first time they're heading on the road all year. Kevin wrote this week about the history of Ohio State on the road in the first game of the season, and much like everything else in Ohio State football, they tend to win. So that is a positive thing in the first time on the road. But the first time on the road, you're out of your routine. This is 5 games into the season. They're very much in a game day routine, and now it's very different. So what do the players have to say about heading out on the road for the first time this season?
Well, I think talking to Luke Wypler, he's looking forward to it. It's their, as you said, first time out there, getting to play at Michigan State for the first time with a crowd for almost all of these guys. And for Luke Wypler, he reminded everybody that the last time he was at East Lansing didn't go for him. He said, I scored. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, I snapped the ball over Jack Miller's head and it went like 30 yards for a safety. I have no recollection of that, but I'm going to believe it because it's coming from the source. But just getting to go back on the road and experiencing the negative crowds. Luke Wypler said he likes to see themselves as the villain and be the bad guys, and they're basically going to town with no good deeds on their mind.
Mm-hmm. And another thing Luke Wypler has on his mind is last year's Heisman Ceremony, which is kind of an interesting thing because Luke Wypler was not invited to the Heisman last year. Mm-hmm. So what is it that Luke Wypler is thinking about every day about the Heisman Ceremony last year, and how does that apply to what they're trying to do out on the field this year?
Yeah, he mentioned the chip on the shoulder the offensive line had coming into this season because they heard all of the criticisms about not being able to run the ball. You've seen the results this year where they have run the ball, but he said the criticisms that they heard, and he said the Heisman Ceremony, I still think about that once a day, meaning the Desmond Howard joke about the offensive line to C.J. Stroud. And he also said, and we'll see what they say this year when C.J. is back there. So they're taking that very seriously. Like they're hungry to have this running game, turn things around. And that was even some of the things that Luke Wypler said, that they've bitten into everything that Justin Fry, new offensive line coach, has given them. And it's a lot like with the defense, what Jim Knowles has said about the defense, where these guys were hungry to succeed and to learn something productive. And it's the same with the offensive line. And you're seeing the results, and you're seeing the results with Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson and Dallin Hayden and T.C. Caffey, and it doesn't matter. They're all running it, and it's because of the offensive line and the things that they're doing, the different looks that they're giving, but mainly the blocking and the mentality.
Mm-hmm. And the mentality on that offensive line, got a chance to talk to Paris Johnson as well. He talked about the fact that they pride themselves on being the most athletic offensive line and that they try to outdo each other. It's very competitive. And he said, we try to outdo each other in non-offensive line things. And it's like, okay, what is a non-offensive line thing? And he said they have like force plates, where there's a force plate technology where they test the wattage from jumps off of the plate. And I mean, it sounds like they're generating electricity. I think that's more of a unit of measurement in terms of energy expended. So he competes with Donovan Jackson in that like every day to see who has better numbers. He said everyone competes, tries to be better, except for Wypler. So Luke Wypler apparently is fine. He was asked about Luke Wypler's personality off the field. He goes, he's from Jersey. It's like, would you like to expand on that? He's like, no, So Luke Wypler from New Jersey. Paris Johnson talked about how he's really close to Willie Anderson. That's something that's been out there a little bit, but also talking to Orlando Pace. And he said it's really cool to just be able to reach out to these two guys who have some experience in the field of playing offensive tackle on the football field. And he said, it's great to just be able to get feedback from them on whatever he's doing, and was it good, was it bad. He said Willie Anderson and Justin Fry are about the same in terms of how critical they are of him, and how nitpicky they get on technique. But he said the most critical person was his cousin Mike Larkin. He was a wide receiver for Ben Roethlisberger at Miami back in the day. And so someone said, Does he have informed criticism of offensive line technique? He's like, well, he has a lot of thoughts on offensive line technique. And so someone asked the obvious follow-up question, well, would you be a better wide receiver? And he said, well, I mean, his route running would be pristine. Outstanding route running. The hands, though, he viewed the hands potentially as a little bit of a problem. Last thing from Paris was he has his foundation, the Paris Johnson Foundation, holding an event Monday, a coat drive at the View on 5th, collecting coats for the homeless and kids, new or gently used coats. So if you'd like to drop off some coats, the Paris Johnson Foundation trying to do a very nice thing as the weather is about to get a little chillier here in Columbus. So that's worth keeping an eye on as well. We talked about Luke Wypler, Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison was asked, hey, how are Cameron Babb, how are Jackson Smith and Jigba? The answer was like, well, there was an answer, but it wasn't really probably nearly as definitive as Ohio State fans were probably hoping it would be.
Yeah, apparently they're coming along and not going to be, I think something the quote was like, I'm not the medical guy. It's not Dr. Marvin, Dr. Harrison. So we'll see, and we'll find out more. We'll see what Ryan Day has to say tomorrow. On Thursday, today, and how much information he will give us. I did see Tanner McAllister dressed and in the handshake line with the military over there, so that he was holding his helmet, so that's a good thing. But still waiting to find out more on him.
Yeah, and someone else who is definitely going to be playing on Saturday is Zach Harrison. Zach Harrison was a big topic of conversation. He's got maybe a little bit of a new role. We've seen that Larry Johnson rushman package a whole bunch where, last week, they will get guys on the field who can just rush the passer on 3rd and long. And on 3rd and long at one point last week, it was Teron Vincent runs off, Marvin Harrison runs on. How does Zach Harrison runs on? Got everyone playing different positions tonight.
Well, and when Zach was out here and Marvin Harrison was getting ready to sit down, he's like, Marvin, tell him we're cousins. And so then when Zach Harrison sat down, it was like, how long have you and Marvin been cousins? And Zach said, since birth.
Zach, it's your cousin, Marvin Harrison. I've got the new sound you've been looking for.
Back to the show.
That's Back to the Future, not Back to the Show.
Back to the show.
Zach Harrison, how does Zach Harrison like playing inside? How does he like that new role? And maybe more importantly, what does Luke Wypler think about it?
Well, it's certainly growing on Zach. We saw the impact that he had against Rutgers in there, and he told Larry Johnson, hey, give me more. I'll do more. If you need me more in there, I will do it. And it's a way for him to stay on the field, because they're rotating guys. So that's one thing. It keeps him on the field, and he's effective at it. It's a little more congested than he's accustomed to, but you fight through it, and he's different than a lot of interior guys that certainly different than tackles that guards and centers will face. He's longer and he's quicker and faster. Luke Wypler says he's very difficult to defend. Like, you can't even reach him because his arms are much longer than you. So he's not. You have to know he's there. You have to be prepared for him. You have to deal with them in a different kind of way. And somebody asked him, like, well, Luke, what do you do? He's like, well, I have to do what I do. It's like, it's kind of like, no, Luke doesn't compete. Like, Luke can, he just does what he does, and he handles what he can handle, and he does a pretty good job.
Tommy Eichelberger was one of the first players out, and of course, what was Tommy Eichelberger asked about? What did Jim Knowles say about Tommy Eichelberger earlier in the week?
He speaks in grunts.
And so you're not going to believe it, but Tommy Eichelberger was asked repeatedly by people as they came up about speaking in grunts. And, Tommy said they kind of, he's not trying to grunt. He's just sort of soft-spoken and a man of few words. And one of the funny lines tonight was Jeremy Birmingham asking Tommy, so what's it like being asked to answer so many times about being a man of few words? So that was, and unsurprisingly, the answer was not a long one. He said, as far as the Knowles grunting comments, quote, it's funny, I agree with it, I probably do. So the Calvin Coolidge of the Ohio State linebacking corps. All right, Tony, we have performed our jobs. Now it is time to have Tony time. Tony, let's talk a little Euchre.
Thank you.
As a native Ohioan, you are born into Euchre.
Yeah, it's in our blood.
It is. I don't know if there's an antibiotic that will take care of that, but if not, what did we learn about Euchre tonight?
Well, you guys got to learn that Cade Stover has taught Tommy Eichelberger how to play euchre, and Cade Stover must be a pretty good euchre player. Tommy Eichelberger, not a great euchre player, not very good yet, still learning, but as an Ohioan, it is a little ingrained. Like, you should be able to pick up on it. It's disappointing that he's still not where he is yet. This is his 4th year in college. By year 1 in college, you should be very good at euchre, especially in Ohio. I mean, I think that's a major at Ohio State. I know it is at Bowling Green.
They had a point during the Tommy Eichelberger interviews where some of the defensive linemen were up and just kind of walked in and just started asking him questions. And one of them asked Tommy Eichelberger about his interests outside of football, and he didn't really have a good answer. So euchre might not be, he might not do a lot outside of the football facility, including euchre. One of them did ask him who is the best euchre person on the team, and I think he said Jim Knowles, which was like, all right. I mean, he's not an Ohio. This is, I believe, his first year living in Ohio, but he is an Ivy League guy, so perhaps he's picked it up quickly.
It is the sport of kings. And he's an elite East Coast elitist.
I will tell you, he also identified the worst euchre player on the team. I mentioned this to you before. You were super eager to find out. I'm going to make you guess. And I will tell you, I'll give you 2 hints. Number 1, it is not a person from Ohio, which you would probably guess. And number 2, it is a person whose name we have discussed on the show at least once tonight.
Is it Luke Wypler?
It is Luke Wypler. So Luke Wypler apparently not great at euchre, at least in Tommy Eichelberger's estimation.
Well, that's too bad. Luke Wypler considers himself a smart person. We've heard that he's smart from his teammates. And trust me, you need to be very smart to be good at euchre. Okay, take that from me, a very good player of euchre. Very good euchre player, Tom. You need a lot of smarts up here and right in here. You need a heart. Not just hearts, diamonds, spades, trump as well. It takes a lot to win at euchre. But the good thing is you don't have to be sober when you do it.
All right, with that, I think it's time to wrap up the show. And Tony, you know what that means. Pick it up. I'm going it alone. All right, get out of here. We're going to wrap up the show today with just a reminder. We're on our way to Michigan State on Friday. Tony and Kevin and I will be up there in East Lansing. We'll have the start of our first road trip dining segment of the year. We'll have our first road pregame show, our first road postgame show. All sorts of coverage, and it's always a nice trip to East Lansing. Even nicer this time of year when it's not minus 1,000 degrees and snowing sideways, as it was in 2018. So we'll have complete coverage from up in Spartan Stadium, which would be a lovely day on the banks of the Red Cedar River. You can follow along with all of the fun at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We'll have, as I mentioned, complete pre and post game coverage, and then of course lots of coverage as well at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Ross Fulton just dropped a fantastic X's and O's piece, reviewing the Rutgers game, talking a little bit about Michigan State. We're going to have Ross on Friday's morning show to talk all about that in even more detail. But make sure you subscribe to BuckeyeHuddle.com. Get also all your recruiting insight, all your X's and O's insight, all your team coverage insight, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Did you get it? Pick it up, go it alone?